Welcome everybody. This is another part of our GeoSync GO management series. We're going to talk a little bit about creating custom workflow layers this morning. And as always, we just want to remind everybody the GeoSync GO cloud service is really a geospatial toolbox. We need to think about it in those terms. So it provides a lot of tools to integrate in to your workflows to help, hopefully to help productivity and efficiency in the work that you do every day. As part of the management series, this topic today really is part of the workflow wizard. So we're going to look at how we create custom layers for our individual workflows. So the configuration is going to be actually part of the workflow wizard. So we'll be looking at the some of the tools and options within that part of that tool, the software, this morning. In terms of layer types in GeoSync GO, there are primarily two different types of layers. We have GeoSync GO layers, which are maybe typically exported from ArcGIS, and they'll have an extension of shp.gse.xml. You'll see those. And what's important about those layers is we'll say those are static layers. So they're coming from your GIS. You're using those for reference purposes. That's not our focus this morning. We don't really customize those layers. If you want to do custom static layers, then you need to customize those from ArcGIS or from some other GIS software, and then import those into GeoSync GO. So that's not our focus this morning. The other type of layer is workflow layers, and those are created and managed in the workflow wizard. And those are the ones that we have an opportunity to really customize and work with, and so we can present the information the way that we want to present it. And workflow layers are characterized by being dynamic. And that is, they refresh each time they are opened in the desktop. So they're connected to our workflow database, and when we open those layers, then they refresh and we see the current data. So we're going to focus in on workflow layers, not on the static layers that you might have exported from ArcGIS. A custom workflow layer is really it's a map layer that's been filtered based on one or more of the attributes associated with it. We're going to look at a workflow, a public schools workflow, where we have all the public schools located in Kentucky, and we might be using that to be able to have people do inspections or other type of work associated with those schools. So our workflow is public schools, but what might be helpful is, since that's a lot of information, it could be helpful for us to customize that layer so that we might have public schools in Region 1, or we might have public schools in Fayette County, or we might even do something where we have public schools in Fayette County that are only preschool, that have preschool because we have an inspector or we have somebody that needs to visit those particular schools. The idea of a custom layer is to filter down that data set so we can target it to the work that needs to be done. And that way, if we have a number of different people that are involved in this particular workflow, which we might have with public schools, we may have a lot of different people involved with different jobs, we can target the data that we deploy to the mobile devices specifically to the work that they are responsible for. Some things are important. A custom workflow layer is going to work just like the primary workflow layer. So when it opens, it's going to refresh the data just like a workflow layer does. It can be published for mobile use. You can also set the ability to edit or allow adding new features from the desktop to a custom layer. So there's really no difference other than the data has been filtered. It's more targeted to whatever focus you want it to be. Creating a custom workflow layer is pretty simple. These are the basic steps that you would go through from the desktop software. You're going to open up the workflow wizard. You're going to select the target workflow, the workflow you're focused on. In our case this morning, we're going to look at public schools workflow. Then you're going to visit the workflow layer tab, and the reason you do that is you need to make sure that sets the workflow wizard to make sure it's set to the proper master layer, whether that's either a feature or inspection layer. And then select the Customize Layer tab, and you need then to set your target project, because remember in GeoSync Go we can have a whole number of projects, an unlimited number of projects, and what we're going to focus on, these layers are assigned to certain projects. So we need to set the project, our target project, and if there are already some customized layers in that particular project folder, then they'll be loaded in and we'll have a chance to modify those, or we can add more layers to it. So from the Customize Layer tab, we can build, save, customize, modify our custom layer. Any of the layers, when we save and build those layers, or build and save those, they're going to be saved in the GeoSearch folder under the target project, just like your workflow layer is, and just like any of the other static layers that you may export from ArcGIS or other GIS software. So this is just another view of that of the workflow wizard, highlighting some of the steps that we just went through. Once you set your workflow, you go to the workflow layer tab and make sure that that's open and set properly, that your template is set properly. Then move to the Customize Layers tab, set the project, the current project you're working with, and then you can begin to add and modify your custom layers. So let's take a look at some actual examples on how we might do this and why this might be useful for us. So I'm going to go. I've got the GeoSync GO Desktop now open. This is a map I've centered on the state of Kentucky. I have my current project, which is Kentucky Education Demo. And I'm going to go ahead and open up. Here's my layer listing, and we see this is my workflow that I'm interested in, which is public schools, and it has all of the data in terms of that's available for this targeted feature. Turn on public schools. We can see all of the schools in the state of Kentucky, which is quite a good number, and that's a useful view. I have access to all of the information there, and I can mouse over those and get the name of the school. I can ID that information and look at it. And what's more, I can then go to this layer tab and have a list of all of my attributes. And from here, I can filter in and find information that I might be interested in. So this is a useful way of looking at the data. But another way to do this, and one that is more useful in terms of our targeted workflow, is to create custom layers. So examples of that might be, maybe I would like to filter this down to only having the schools in Fayette County. So I've created a custom layer that takes all of those schools and then filters it down so that I only have the schools that are located within Fayette County. Now, if I identify these, I still have all the same kind of information, but I have a much smaller targeted data set to work with. And I look at that information now in my attribute view, then the only data that's in here are schools that are located in Fayette County. Another example of that could be Region 1 schools. Let me zoom back out, and we can see that now we have only the schools that are in this particular region of the state. Region 2, focus to that group. So I might have a different set of inspectors, or a different set of people that are involved in working in those different regions, and it's helpful if I could filter that information so that they only have the data that they need when they're actually involved in doing the work. It's going to be simpler and more straightforward. So let's take a look at how, let me go back to our public schools view. So we have this overall view. This is, we've created a workflow, already set that up, populated our data into our workflow. This is where we're starting. So let's go to our workflow wizard and examine how we actually create a custom layer. We open the workflow wizard. Our first step is to select the target workflow, which is public schools. And then we come over and look at our settings. And this has already been in place. So we've already defined our workflow. The next thing we need to do is go to our workflow layer tab and make sure that everything is set properly there. In our workflow layer, our template can be set either to feature or inspection. And that's important because when we start customizing the layer, it's gonna use the template that is set in this tab. That's why it's important to visit workflow layer first to make sure what's been set. If you come to this tab and none of these items, none of these fields are checked, then you need to go through and define your template first, build and save your layer first. That needs to be done before you're able to actually customize a layer. So once we visited this tab, we set this to feature, and everything looks good here. Then we can go to our customized layers tab, and then the first thing we need to do from this tab is we have to set our current project. So if we look here in the project, we have lots and lots of projects associated with this GeoSync GO account. I'm going to come down. I know that I'm working with the project I'm interested in is this KDE demo project. And when I select the project, GeoSync GO actually will go out and look and see if there are already some custom layers in that particular folder. And if they are, it will load those in. If not, then you won't see any layers there. But we, in this case, have 3 custom layers that have already been set up for this particular project. So let's take a look at our Fayette County schools. In this case, we wanted to filter the public schools down to only showing schools that are in Fayette County. So if we look at that, I select on it, what we have, this is the name of our custom layer. We have a chance to name it whatever we want it to be. I've basically marked that I can edit that data from the desktop. And so if I only want that to be read-only from the desktop, if I don't check that, then I won't actually be able to edit the data from there. But in this case, I've marked it that way. And then the way that we filter that is with a where statement. So because a custom layer is just a filter based on an attribute, then we have to configure what that filter is going to be. In this case, we use county is equal to Fayette is our filter. If I want to look at that, so the tools that I have available on the toolbar, first, if I click refresh, it just goes out and refreshes that particular folder. Add will add a custom layer. If I want to delete this custom layer, then I can use the delete button. The preview data will let me take an existing custom layer, and if I select that, it's going to let me preview the information that's contained in that particular custom layer. So if I preview this, I can see all the field names, the column names that are in my layer, and then I can see the data associated with that. And one of the things that we see is that if we come across and find county, only Fayette County is listed because that is our filter. I'm going to look at Region 1 schools, which is another filter that we did. In this case, we have region is equal to 1, and we gave this a name, Region 1 schools. If I preview that data, then we'll come across and see that this is Region 1. Everything in here is Region 1. We have all the schools that are located in that have that common attribute in play. And the same thing for Region 2. Now let's go ahead and create a custom layer for Region 3 schools. It's a fairly simple thing to do. We click Add. That creates a new a new custom layer for us, and then we're going to give this a name, and I'm going to call this Region 3 Schools. And then I need to have a where statement. So this is where it's important. I have to know something about the data. So I'm going to have to come in here and figure out which attribute it is that I'm going to filter on. And I'm filtering on the region. And I'm going to type in region is equal to, I got to put these in single quotes, 3. So region is equal 3. 3 is in single quotes. I can save, and then that will give me a preview of that layer. So now I can look and see did that work properly. And if I come across, I'm going to see that now I have only region 3 data. So I've been successful for that. Once I know that I have the layer the way that I want it, I need to build and save to actually create the layer and make it available for the desktop and make it available for publishing. So I click build and save. And now that layer is going to be available for me to use. So let's go ahead and do another one of those, and we'll just do another one called Region 4 Schools. And I'm going to allow this to edit, and we'll call this Region equal 4. And I'm going to save. That's good. All region 4, build and save, and now that particular layer has been created. Now, one of the other things I'd like to do is I have certain work where I need to only target. I want to target Fayette County schools, but I only want to go to schools that actually have a preschool associated with that. So I'm going to look back at my Fayette County schools listing. And I'm going to preview that data, and what I'm going to see here is I'm looking for how could I tell that if the school has a preschool or not. Well, if I go through and look at my data, what I find is that if I focus in on this low grade attribute, I'm going to find that some schools are labeled to have preschool and some are not. So one way that I could filter this again, the Fayette County school, if I also filtered this based on low grade equal preschool, then I would have a custom layer that is in Fayette County and has a list of schools that have preschool as part of their school curriculum or their school class structure. So I want to create that. I'm going to create a new layer here, and then we're going to call this one Fayette County Schools with Preschool. Now, I need the where statement is going to be a little more complex than that. We're going to do county equal Fayette, and that means I'm going to filter that based on only schools that are in Fayette County, and I want to use low grade. And this has to be, it's not case sensitive, but it has to be spelled properly. Low grade is equal to preschool. And that has to be in quotes. So if we look at this statement now, we're going to take this new layer, we're going to filter it based on the county's Fayette and any school that also has where the low grade, the lowest grade that it has available at that particular school is preschool, then that's the list that I want, and I also want to allow that to be edited. So I'm going to click the Save button, and that'll configure, and now I can see that I have a new layer definition set called Fayette Schools with Preschool. Now let's look and see if that's really what happened. I can come across now low grade, everything here is now preschool, and all the county is Fayette. So that's what I wanted, and I'm going to build and save, and now that particular layer has now been saved for my use. We'll go back and look at that in just a minute. If I need to modify any of these layers, I can do so by just selecting on it. If I need to make a change to that, then I could change the filter and rebuild and save and update that. And if I work down this list, we'll see that Region 3 schools, I really want all these to allow editing, and I didn't mark that. I can now mark that, build and save, and now that will have updated that layer to allow edit. So everything else is set properly. We created a number of custom layers, and when we close our workflow wizard, once you close the workflow wizard, GeoSync Go will go through and refresh the layers, and then we should be able to access those. So now if we come back and look at our layer list, we now have some new layers associated with that, the ones that we created, Fayette County Schools with preschool. We now have Region 3 and Region 4 schools. So let's go back and look again. We had public schools, which was our overall view with all the schools. We're going to go through and look at our new listing, Region 3 schools, Region 4 schools, and then the one we just finished up, which was Fayette County Schools with preschool. So let's go in and look at that a little bit more closely. And so if we're looking at Fayette County, if we look at all the schools in Fayette County, here's our entire list. But then we can have a filtered list that only have those with preschool. Now, if we wanted to target that to a specific field crew or inspection crew or whatever the work happens to be, then we could deploy this particular layer to the mobile device, and then that group, that's the only data they would have, would be the schools that actually have preschool available. And again, I can ID those. I can edit the data from here just as I've configured and work with. Now, we can build these from the workflow wizard. That's where we need to create these initially, but we can also help manage these layers from the Manage Layers tool that you can get from this main menu. So if we go from our project settings and tools and go to Manage Layers, we can also do some configuration from here. So if we take a look at this, the custom layer that we created, we can see that this is associated with the public schools workflow ID. The table that it's using, what's the source of the data, is LYR Public Schools. And what you're going to find is this is pretty much consistent all the time. Once you identify what workflow it's associated with, the table is going to be LYR, which stands for Layer Public Schools. And then our filter is just available. So we can actually make changes if we need to make some changes from this dialog. If we need to edit that information, we can change that and update it. We can also delete the layer from here. If we look at some of these others, we can go through and look at some of the information that's associated with that. One item that is available is the maximum draw features. So one thing that's helpful here with public schools, we've limited GeoSync Go by default, limits the number of features that's going to draw on the screen to 500. There's about 1,300 or 1,500 public schools in Kentucky. It's helpful to be able to maybe see all of those drawn. GeoSync Go, typically the number of features that you can draw on the screen on the desktop, about 2,000 features is about all you're going to be able to do before it begins to bog down, or you're going to have sort of memory problems associated with that. So we can go ahead and set that to 2,000 maximum draw features and update public schools. And then if we open that layer up, what we'll see is now it's going to draw all those features for me. So our ability to manage customized layers is primarily going to be from the workflow wizard. Go back through that again, go to public schools, set our workflow. We go to the workflow layer to make sure that we have actually configured a template layer or a primary workflow layer, which we have. We go to customize layers, and then we need to set the project that our target project. and then our customized layers will be pre-filled into the list, and then from here we can make modifications to those, or we can add new layers. We can preview that information and update that. Once the layers have been created, then we do have some options to use the Manage Layers dialog to make some additional modifications to that. Any of the layers that we've created, custom layers, we can also use to publish. So if we go to our Publish Layers tool, then we'll see that those layers, those custom layers, are also listed just like any other layer, any workflow layer, or any other GeoSync GO static layer. And if we want to publish that, we can select, say, Fayette County Schools with preschool, and we can do our Region 1, 2, 3, and 4, and if we publish those to the cloud, then, and I'm going to remove these. Then now what we've done is, for this particular project, we have now made this set of layers available for download to any mobile devices that are activated to this particular project. Customized workflow layers are a really valuable option and something that is very helpful on just about all workflows that you're associated with. It's almost always helpful to be able to filter that data down, to make it more targeted, particularly for those that are doing work. Smaller data set, focused data set is always more efficient. So it's a valuable option and tool, and something that that's fairly easy to set up and configure. So that completes our webinar for today, and we'll continue on next week. Thanks.